The day I found the letter started like any other. I was cleaning out my mother's old bedroom. She had passed away 3 months earlier, and I was finally ready to go through her things. It was a quiet Sunday, and the house felt still, as if waiting for something to happen. I opened the tall wardrobe and began taking out clothes she hadn't worn in years. They still smelled like her faint perfume and warm cotton. At the back, under a pile of folded scarves, I noticed a small wooden box. It looked out of place, almost hidden. The lid was tight, but it wasn't locked. Inside, I found a bundle of letters tied with a thin blue ribbon. Most were addressed to Susan, my mother's name. But one letter stood out. It had no stamp. The handwriting was neat and soft. The envelope was yellow with age, and it said, "For Emily, when she is ready." I sat down on the edge of the bed, my heart beginning to race. My name was not Emily. My name was Anna Martin. At least, that's what I had always believed. My fingers hesitated, but I opened the envelope and unfolded the paper inside. I started to read. "My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, it means the truth has come to you. You were born as Emily Rose, and I am your birth mother." My breath caught. I looked at the words again to make sure I had read them right. "I was 17 when I had you. I was scared, and I had no support. I made the most painful decision of my life. I gave you to a woman I trusted. Her name was Susan Martin. She promised to love you as her own, and I believed her. I still do." I put the letter down and stared at the wall. My chest felt tight, and my eyes were burning. My mother, no, the woman I thought was my mother had kept this secret from me for 24 years. I had lived my whole life as Anna, but I was born Emily. The room felt different now. The air was heavy. I stood up and paced slowly, holding the letter in my hand. My legs felt weak. I sat again and read the rest. "I never stopped thinking about you. Every birthday, I imagined how you looked. I don't want to cause pain. I only want you to know the truth. If one day you want to find me, I will be waiting." There was no address, no phone number, nothing to help me find her. That night, I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. My thoughts wouldn't stop. Was my whole life a lie? Why didn't Susan tell me the truth? Was I really so different from the girl I believed I was? I looked around my childhood bedroom. The posters, the photos, the little things I once loved, they all felt unfamiliar now. In the morning, I made tea and sat at the kitchen table. The letter lay in front of me. I touched the paper again and again, as if it would speak. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. I felt lost, like someone had quietly moved the ground beneath me. I decided to visit my aunt, my mother's younger sister. Her name was Laura, and she lived nearby. We had never been close, but she had always been kind. I called her and asked if I could come over. She said yes without hesitation. At her house, We sat on the couch with 2 cups of tea. I didn't wait long. I showed her the letter. She read it slowly, her face calm but serious. When she finished, she took a deep breath. "She wanted to tell you," Laura said quietly. "She was just too afraid." "Afraid of what?" I asked. "She didn't want to lose your love," she replied. "She thought you would hate her." I looked down at the letter. "Do you know who my birth mother is?" Laura nodded. "Her name is Claire. Claire Daniels. She was a friend of your mother's. They met through a support group." I held my breath. "Do you know where she is now?" Laura shook her head. "She moved away after the adoption. Your mom got letters from her for years, but they stopped." "Letters?" I asked. Laura stood and walked to a small drawer in the corner. She returned with a faded envelope. "I think your mother kept some. This one came about 10 years ago." I remember her crying after she read it. I opened the envelope carefully. It was a short letter, written in the same soft handwriting. "Dear Susan, is Emily okay? Does she still have the smile I remember? Please tell her one day that I loved her. I live in a town by the sea now. If she ever wants to come, I will wait." I looked up. My eyes were full of tears. "Do you know which town she meant?" I asked. Laura thought for a moment. "I believe it was Seabourn. She mentioned it once." I left Laura's house with a new purpose. Seabourn wasn't far, just a few hours by train. That night, I packed a small bag. I didn't tell anyone. I wasn't sure what I would find, but I needed to go. I needed to know where I came from. The next morning, I boarded a train to Seabourn. I watched the fields and towns pass by through the window. My hands were cold. My heart beat fast. I didn't know her address. I didn't even know if she still lived there, but I had to try. When I arrived, the town was quiet. It was small, with narrow streets and small shops. I walked slowly, unsure of what to do. I stopped at a local library and asked if they had a phone book. They did. I searched the names. There it was. Claire Daniels, 43 River Lane. My hand shook as I copied down the address. It was only a 10-minute walk. I walked past a bakery, a school, and a small park. Then I saw the house. It was simple, with a garden full of yellow flowers. I stood at the gate for a long time. I didn't go in. I couldn't. Not yet. I walked to the park nearby and sat on a bench. I watched children play. I watched a woman walk her dog. My hands were in my lap, holding the letter again. I read it one more time. That's when I saw her. She was sitting on a bench across the park. She looked older now, maybe in her 40s. She had the same soft eyes from the photo I had found in the attic. She looked around the park quietly. Her face was calm, but her eyes held something deep. I didn't move. I just watched her. It was her. I knew it. Somehow, my heart knew it. She stood up slowly and walked toward the exit. I didn't follow. I needed more time. I had waited 24 years. I could wait one more day. That night, I stayed in a small hotel near the train station. I lay in bed, looking at the ceiling again, just like before. But this time, I felt something new. I wasn't only lost, I was also found. Before I share the rest of my story, could you please tell me where you're from? It gives me strength to know there's someone out there who listens to me, who understands me. It means a lot to me. The next morning, I woke up early. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the park, my birth mother, Claire. I hadn't spoken to her yet, but now that I had seen her face, I couldn't leave. I got dressed and walked through Seabourn's quiet streets again. The air was cool and fresh. I stopped at a small cafe to gather my thoughts. I ordered a tea and sat near the window. I thought about what I would say. Would she even want to see me? Would she remember? After finishing my tea, I walked back to 43 River Lane. The yellow flowers in the garden moved gently in the morning breeze. I stood at the gate again. My hand was on the latch, but I couldn't move. So I sat on the small wall in front of the house and waited. About 10 minutes later, the door opened. Claire stepped outside holding a watering can. She wore a sweater and loose pants. Her hair was tied back. She didn't see me right away. She watered her plants quietly. I watched every movement. Then she looked up. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I stood slowly. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. "Hi," I said softly, almost without sound. But she heard. She didn't smile, but her eyes filled with something I couldn't explain. She walked closer, still holding the watering can. "You're her," she said. Her voice shook. I nodded. "I found your letters. I read them all." She sat down on the wall beside me. She put the watering can on the ground. "I thought this day might come," she said, "but I didn't know if I should hope." We sat in silence for a moment. The wind moved through the trees above us. "I found out 3 days ago," I said. "My mother passed away. She left me a letter." Claire looked down at her hands. "She was a good woman," she said. "I was lucky to find her." I nodded. "She was strict sometimes, but she loved me." "I never stopped thinking about you," Claire said. "I didn't want to give you away, but I was 17. My parents wouldn't let me keep you." "I understand," I said. And I meant it. Claire looked at me again. Her eyes were glassy. "Can I show you something?" I nodded. She stood up and led me into the house. Inside, everything was warm and simple. There were old photos, plants, and books. She led me to a small shelf and pulled out a photo album. She opened it to the first page. There was a picture of her at 17. She was pregnant in the photo, standing by a tree with her hand on her stomach. That was the last photo before you were born, she said. She turned the pages. There were more photos. Photos of me as a baby. Your adoptive mother sent these to me every few months for a while. I looked closely. There I was, in a little pink blanket, smiling at the camera. I didn't remember those days, of course, but it was still me. She kept her promise, Claire said. She said she would love you, and she did. I never felt unloved, I told her, but now I feel like I was missing something. Claire nodded. Me too. We talked for hours. She told me about her life. She never married. She worked in a bookstore and lived in Seabourn for almost 10 years. She never had other children. I didn't want to replace you, she said. Her words stayed in my heart. After a while, she offered me lunch. We ate simple sandwiches and drank more tea. It felt strange and familiar at the same time, like visiting a distant memory. I asked if I could visit again, and she said yes. I returned to my hotel that evening and sat quietly on the bed. I looked out the window at the darkening sky. I felt something new, something peaceful. The next day, I visited her again. This time, she showed me baby shoes she had kept, and a small bracelet with the name Emily on it. I held it in my hand. It was tiny, worn, but full of meaning. I wore this? I asked. Yes, she smiled. Only for a few days. But yes, each visit I learned more about her and about myself. Her voice became familiar. Her laugh reminded me of my own. I stayed in Seabourn for 4 days. On the last morning, we walked by the beach. She told me how she used to come there and wonder if I was happy. We didn't say much that morning. Words felt too small. Before I left, she hugged me tightly. Whatever happens, she said, I am proud of you. I returned home with a full heart and many questions answered. But something had changed inside me. I no longer felt lost. Back in my town, I visited my aunt again. I told her everything. She cried. She said she was happy I found the truth. Then she gave me a small box I hadn't seen before. This was left with your things when you were adopted, she said. Inside was a folded note in Claire's handwriting. To my daughter Emily, you are loved. Never forget that. I read it several times. Her words stayed with me like a quiet light. I also began to read the adoption documents closely. I wanted to understand every part of my history. I even contacted the lawyer to learn more. He shared a few more details. It helped me connect the missing pieces of my life story. Soon after, I visited the cemetery. I stood at Susan's grave and placed flowers there. Thank you for loving me, I whispered. Even if it began with a secret. The wind moved gently through the trees. I stayed a while, remembering her face. Over the next few weeks, I stayed in touch with Claire. We spoke on the phone often. She asked about my work, my hobbies, even my favorite foods. We were building something, slowly, carefully. But honestly, sometimes I still struggled. Some days were heavy. I had new truths to carry, but I didn't carry them alone anymore. One afternoon, I opened a new notebook. I began writing down everything that had happened. The letter, the trip, the first meeting. I didn't want to forget any of it. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was mine, and it was real. After everything that happened, I started seeing the world differently. Not because the sky changed or people acted strangely, but because I had changed inside. I went back to work and tried to return to my routine. The office was the same, and my coworkers welcomed me kindly. But I felt like a different person walking through the same doors. My thoughts stayed with Claire. Every time I answered an email or filled out a form, her voice echoed in my mind. I remembered the way she looked at me when we sat on her couch for the first time. That quiet, almost scared hope in her eyes. I began writing to her more often. Not just short messages, but long letters. I told her about my day, my thoughts, and memories from childhood. I didn't know if those stories belonged to her now, but I wanted her to have them. She wrote back. Her letters were soft and gentle, like her voice. She asked about my dreams. She shared small pieces of her past. She told me how she once wanted to become a nurse, but life moved too quickly and took her in another direction. Reading her letters made me feel closer to her. I learned things my heart had always wanted to know. I also continued to visit Susan's grave regularly. I talked to her there in my mind, sometimes aloud when no one was near. I told her I forgave her. I thanked her. She had kept her promise. She had loved me well. But forgiveness didn't erase all my feelings. Some days I felt sadness without reason. Some nights I woke up with heavy thoughts. Who would I have been if I had grown up with Claire? What did I lose by not knowing the truth earlier? Still, I knew those questions had no answers. And I reminded myself, I was loved. I was here. I was whole. My Aunt Laura became a stronger part of my life too. We spoke often, and I visited her more. She shared more stories about my mother's younger years. She told me that Susan often stood by the window on my birthdays and looked out in silence. She wanted to tell you, Laura said again. She just didn't know how. One Saturday, I traveled back to Seabourn. I wanted to surprise Claire. It had been a month since we last saw each other. I brought a small box with me. Inside was a bracelet, the one with the name Emily. I had kept it close, but I felt ready to give it back. It belonged to her too. When I arrived, Claire was in her garden. She looked up and smiled when she saw me. It was the kind of smile that warmed something deep inside me. We sat in her kitchen and talked for hours. I told her how life had been lately, about work, about small things. She listened with such quiet care. When I gave her the bracelet, her hands shook a little. She held it gently, like something sacred. I didn't know you still had it, she said softly. It always made me wonder, I told her. Now I know where it came from. That visit was the start of something new. We no longer felt like strangers walking slowly around a shared past. We started walking forward together. She invited me to meet her friends in the neighborhood. She introduced me as my daughter. That word, once hidden from both of us, now lived between us with pride. Some of her friends knew the story, others didn't. But they all welcomed me. They offered kind smiles, gentle hugs, warm tea. Claire showed me her favorite bookstore, her favorite cafe, and the old path by the sea where she used to walk alone. Now we walked it together. I stayed in Seabourn for a week that time. Each day felt simple but meaningful. We cooked dinner, cleaned the dishes, shared old music, and watched the waves. We also went through more photo albums. She showed me pictures of her childhood, her parents, her school years. It was like finding a whole new family history I never knew was mine. One afternoon, we sat on the porch while the sun set. The sky turned orange and gold. She turned to me and said, "Thank you for coming back." I nodded and smiled. I didn't need to say anything. After that visit, I knew something clearly. I had two mothers. One raised me, one gave me life. Both were part of who I was, and I didn't need to choose between them. At home, I started writing about my experience more seriously, not just in letters or notebooks, but in a way that felt like a story. I wanted to tell it honestly, not for others to admire, but to understand. I joined a local writing group. I met people who also carried quiet stories inside them. Some were about adoption. Others were about grief, change, or identity. We listened to each other, read our drafts aloud, and offered gentle advice. For the first time, I didn't feel like the only one carrying hidden history. That support helped me grow. It helped me believe my voice mattered. One evening, I was reading over something I had written when I realized how far I had come. At the start, I had felt broken by the secret. Now I felt rebuilt by the truth. I continued building a new relationship with Claire. We didn't try to make up for lost years. Instead, we focused on what we had now. She came to visit my town once in the spring. She stayed with Aunt Laura, and we all had dinner together. It felt strange and beautiful, two pieces of my world sitting at one table. Claire even brought me a small gift, a handmade notebook. On the first page, she wrote, "To Emily, my daughter, my joy. Write your truth. Let it live." I kept that notebook on my desk. It reminded me that truth, even when painful, brings light. Months passed, and the heavy feelings slowly softened. The questions didn't disappear, but they stopped hurting. 1 year after I found the letter, I visited the small library in Seabourn. I printed a short version of my story and added it to their local voices shelf. I didn't write my full name. I didn't need recognition. I only hoped that someone else who felt lost might read it and feel seen. Claire was proud. She read it and cried. She said, This story started in pain, but it ends in connection. And she was right. Looking back, I still carry the weight of that letter. It changed everything. But it also gave me something I didn't know I needed. The truth. The whole truth. In all its difficulty and beauty. Now, when I hear someone say, family is about blood, I think carefully, because I know better. Family is about love, about showing up, about choosing each other, again and again, even after time and distance. I am Emily. I am Anna. I am the daughter of 2 mothers, and I am proud of the path that brought me here. I hope you have enjoyed the story. Like and comment if you want to hear more soon.